So let's go in for the resident permit for an employed person. What kind of permit is this? You will need a resident permit for an employed person, in bracket, Tiontekian Oleskelupa, if you are not permitted to work on the basis of another resident permit or without one. A resident permit for employed persons is not necessarily for all jobs. This is so much important to understand about. At the website of the Finnish Immigration Service, you can check on what kind of resident permit you need. For example, a resident permit for an employed person is required for the following jobs: cooks, cleaners, nurses. An employee's resident permit may involve a labor market test. This means that the employer must check whether manpower for the position is available in the labor market in Finland or the European or Eastern Economic Area within the reasonable time. Finnish Immigration Service decides on whether or not you'll be granted a resident permit. Now, I would love to dive a little bit more about this type of resident permit by reading a few texts on the Finnish Immigration Service website. So let's go right away. So this is what the Immigration Service website says about resident permit for an employed person. It says that apply for a resident permit with this application if you are coming to Finland to work for a Finnish employer or other employer operating in Finland. A resident permit for an employed person is granted for the field of employment to which your job belongs, which means they have a specific industry. You must have confirmed employment before you can apply for this permit. A resident permit for an employed person is not granted to so-called light entrepreneurs who work through an invoicing service company, but also a resident permit for an employed person may be subject to labor market testing, which means that the employer must establish if there is available labor force within a reasonable time in Finland or within the European Union or Eastern Economic Area for the work in question. Of course, that information is already given in the Info Finland website. And they continue by saying that if you apply for this permit as a first resident permit, you must submit the application abroad, which means you don't come here and apply here. You submit your application abroad. Applications for an extended permit can only be submitted in Finland. If you want to extend, you extend it here. You don't go back to your home country and say you want to extend. Nope, it doesn't go like that. And if your employer has obtained employer certification, you can apply for a D visa at the same time as you apply for a resident permit. The D visa allows you to travel to Finland immediately after you have been issued with a resident permit, and D visa sticker has been attached to your passport. Your spouse and children can apply for a D visa if they were applying for a resident permit on the basis of family ties. So that is what you needed to know about the resident permit for an employed person. Of course, there is some additional information here I would like also to read very quickly, and this is about the right to work. You cannot start to work before you get a resident permit for an employed person. You can only work in the field of employment to which your job belongs and for which you have been granted a resident permit. You may have several jobs in the same field of employment. When you hold a resident permit for an employed person, you may also find employment in a national labor shortage sector. In bracket, they have provided a website which reads Työvoimabarometri.fi. I will add this on the video so you can see it, but also on the accompanying text, maybe in the comment section on TikTok. So that shows the list of national labor shortage sectors, and which are always updated yearly. When you hold a valid resident permit for an employed person and find employment in a national labor shortage sector, you do not need to apply for a new resident permit for an employed person to work in the new sector. If the list of national labor shortage sectors changes during your protection period, you are allowed to find employment in sectors that are on the list and in sectors that have been on the list during your unemployment period. Your right to work will continue in your valid employment relationship for as long as your resident permit is valid. If you apply for an extended permit, check if you have the right to work while your application is being processed. So I believe that information should be enough, at least for the moment. Please stay tuned for the coming video to get informed more. Bye-bye.